History. History always is, at best, like this story, a chiaroscuro. The 23 Club by Edward Flaherty. Episode 10. Library, Majlis. Majlis is an Arabic term meaning a place of sitting, used to describe various types of special gatherings and places of special gatherings among common interest groups, be it religious, administrative, or social. Part 1. Back to business. Chalmers had lingered, to say the very least, as he had walked through those gardens. He was now a bit late as he reached the library. Entering, he was immediately calmed by the mingling fragrances of agar-wood, sandalwood, and amber, blended in a bukhor, an incense that lightly infused the cool, dry, and comfortable library air. He inhaled deeply, 2-3 times, then felt simultaneously relaxed and focused. Jean-Claude, sitting, reading the local newspapers, saw him enter. He arose, they shook hands. After exchanging greetings and sitting down, both agreed the best drink would be Moroccan fresh mint tea, especially since the fresh mint was grown locally in the library gardens. The mix included a pinch of black tea and refined white sugar chipped from large blocks, all to be prepared in front of them. The final presentation, according to the menu, should include a seasonably available layer of fresh orange blossoms floating on the top. Proper Moroccan tea in a restaurant was always theater. The drama arrived as the waiter poured the tea from the pot to the small tea glasses, elongating the thread-like stream of tea to almost a meter before closing it down so that not a drop was spilled during the pouring. As it was poured, the smell of the steaming fresh mint tea captivated. After the pouring ceremony, a cloth was removed from a small, colorfully hand-painted, Moorish-style earthen bowl. Inside the bowl were pure white and fresh orange blossoms, along with freshly picked young mint sprigs. The waiter gently tonged them into the tea. The orange blossom fragrance overlapped the mint, and by scent alone refreshed nearly to sweet intoxication. After sampling the hot tea and fully appreciating the fulsome blended aromas, Chalmers reviewed with Jean-Claude all the key project and business players he had met. Jean-Claude explained how those players were related to the top members of the Abu Dhabi ruling family. He pointed out, while these relationships are never really obvious to many of the business people and workers here in the Emirates, behind the scenes, these are the relationships that keep everything ticking over, the relationships with roots deep into Bedou history, that guide the morals and ethics of this emirate and the UAE. Jean-Claude explained, it started with Sheikh Zayed bin Khalifa bin Nahyan I in the 19th century, and was consolidated by Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan bin Nahyan, who, in the 20th century, the late 1960s to be exact, successfully led the unification of the 7 Emirates. It still continues today with the Nahyan family. These are the rulers of Abu Dhabi, and these are the rulers of the UAE. The leaders of the other 6 Emirates and the Nahyans interact through Majlis, as has always been the tradition. Even though national government institutions and administrative procedures have been overlaid, underneath you will find the strong fundamental bond is the evolving Bedou Majlis tradition, born from the long-term shared hardships. Jean-Claude explained further. The success of the Emirati tribes, enduring and working through the climatic hardships and the shortage of water, has built a strength of character extremely unique. Based upon these strengths, the Emiratis have an internal pride that is rarely examined by the world's mainstream media. You can find references to it in books written by authors like Wilfred Thesiger and Frauke Herd Bey. But most mainstream writers, expat workers and businessmen alike, choose the easy way, accepting the centuries-old negative stereotypes of the Bedou character and overlaying them onto all contemporary business and workplace relationships. That stuff is good to know, but it will not get you to the core of people's motivations here. In public, the Emiratis do not talk about it, but they do have a self-consciousness about this modern world, its communications, and its values. Jean-Claude continued. Emiratis think that modern Western world values are not based on the strength of austerity, but rather based on the relativity of excesses. Chalmers concluded. Jean-Claude, this kind of cultural gap is a fundamental challenge in all work out here. At least, that's how I have found it. For me, a three-stage process has always worked. Inform myself, then trust, but verify. The conversation paused. Part 2. Occam's Razor. Enjoying their pot of mint tea, Chalmers and Jean-Claude sat comfortably, in near silence, modulated in the background only by the delicate strings of a lute solo. The lute is known here as an oud. Its music is everything that the empty quarter isn't. Gentle, delicate, controlled by humans. Riding on the soft, fluid currents of oud music, they absorbed the cultured atmosphere of the high-ceilinged library, its gentle, indirect lighting, and its softly colored walls, covered some with artifacts, some with contemporary Emirati art. The artifacts were from the sands, including original botanical pen and ink drawings with handwritten notes detailing every aspect of the materials and growth of date palms, the Phoenix dactylifera. Also displayed on the walls, in between those drawings, were colorful hangings of old, hand-woven cloth, the cloth used in and around a life of camels and temporary shelters, as were common in the sands. On the wall, complementing the cloth, was a selection of large-format black-and-white photographs, featuring barasti shelters. Barastis are built and woven with parts from the date palm and the mangrove. The photographs included barastis from the island Abu al-Abiyad, from Al Ain, from Abu Dhabi, and from Liwa. The barasti shelter photos demonstrated the need for shade, for ventilation, and it might arguably still be deduced, even with plentiful electricity and air conditioning in the country, a fundamental core for understanding a local approach to sustainability. On the opposite two walls were exhibitions from two regional artists. One exhibit included the works of an Emirati lady, Najat Maki, whose colorful, emotion-driven paintings were inspired by sand, sea, and sky. The second exhibit included the works of another Gulf artist of world renown, Abdul Qadir al-Rais, displaying a number of his paintings featuring doors and windows, emphasizing in this region the unique and complex social, physical, and metaphysical challenges of inside and outside. While Chalmers was meditating over these, he recalled the recent Ashura experience with Jean-Claude in Bahrain, and their subsequent conversations. He suggested to Jean-Claude, "Despite what you say about mortification in Christian religions, the Philippines, Opus Dei, it is a very small minority, not like that very public side of Islam, the Shiite Ashura blood-soaked, trans-induced Zanjo flagellations. That preoccupation with violence is almost as repugnant to this Western Christian as September 11th, 2001, and the ongoing senseless murder of Muslims by other Muslims in Iraq and Afghanistan this past decade, and for how long, how many hundreds of thousands were killed in the 1980s Iraq-Iran border war. How can anyone balance that heartless disregard for human life with the beauty, the sensitivity of this library, the arts and crafts on display here? Jean-Claude observed. It does uncover a basic human condition, doesn't it? They sat quietly for a moment. Then Chalmers wondered out loud, Jean-Claude, could all this UAE development in Westerner attracting tourism, Atlantis, the Louvre, the Guggenheim, be nothing more than an organized exercise in da'wah, an exercise simply intended to spread Islam? Jean-Claude recalled a similar conversation he had had with a young Emirati in Liwa a couple years back. Jean-Claude recalled clearly him saying, jihad and da'wah are simply both sides of the same coin. If one is convinced in his belief, he uses his natural abilities to convince others. Thus, jihad and da'wah exist side by side. Jean-Claude suggested to Chalmers, da'wah, taqiyya. As an infidel, a kafir, you can never be sure. What is it that keeps people from sharing trust, from sharing 100% trust? I think you are right, Chalmers, in this kind of cross-cultural business climate when you say, inform yourself first, then trust, but verify. Or others might say, you just have to be able to compartmentalize. Chalmers thought this could be said differently. Know your enemy. He followed on wondering, is everyone he works with here his friend or his enemy? Business is not warfare, or is it? Cynicism and common sense mingle as uncomfortable friends sometimes, he thought with a smile. Then he commented in humor to Jean-Claude, the Emiratis, they make it easy to come here to do business. The only thing they confiscate from you on entry is Occam's razor. They both had a jolly laugh, took a drink of mint tea, and became quiet again. Part 3. Toons is in the house. Chalmers' mobile vibrated. He reached for it, but before he could open the text message, Toons van der Walt had found him. Chalmers introduced Jean-Claude to Toons, explaining Jean-Claude's historical work in Liwa. Toons was not particularly interested in historical work by others. Chalmers tried to lighten up the conversation, observing and remarking that for this Thursday evening, the end of the local work week, Toons was looking fresh and unusually relaxed. Toons pulled up a chair, moved slightly closer to them, and privately shared. Once a month, I come to this spa for a gentleman's facial. Most spas offer gentlemen's facials and Thai massage, but most of them are done by Filipina girls. Here, the girls are all Thai, and here, the gentlemen's facials are special. These girls have all the hand skills. Toons smiled just short of a leer, and winked. He concluded, so you asked me about my relaxed state? Now you know. Jean-Claude said nothing. Chalmers had to speak up. Come on, Toons. That story is so old. Here in Dubai, that was an urban legend 5 years ago. Stop with that urban legend crock, Chalmers. It's just because you have not been there. These hotels have more options than most people ever guess. Hotels are delicately discreet about these options for preferred clients. I have a South African friend working as a pastry chef in this very hotel. He makes special creations for the spa. Toons winked, smiled, and said he makes za'atar croissants to order. Not just any variety, but his own special mix. A traditional Lebanese gold za'atar. I'm feeling good just talking about them. Chalmers interrupted. Toons, you're starting your own urban legend. Let's get down to business. That closed it. Toons focused on Chalmers and got serious. Now, Chalmers, how are you doing with the fix? I'm counting on you. What have you found this week regarding Liwa Kasar? You are in the game. We will have the result, right? Chalmers took a sip from his mint tea and lingered over the fragrance of the floating orange blossoms, making Toons wait for it, then carefully explained. It's possible, but it will take 8 months of hard and dedicated work by a team, and some of the landscape contractor's people obstructing impediments may need replacing. And if I am to succeed on such short notice, your contracted project management team, as well as your lower-level internal CTF consensus-based management structure, will have to be suspended. Toons was not satisfied. He was impatient. He wanted for an answer only, "Yes, we can." And despite his recent refreshed relaxation, he had no time for any details. But Chalmers was emphatic. "Listen, Toons, you must keep your design managers and commercial bean counters away from me, and give me line-item sign-off on all landscape contractor invoices." Toons interrupted and pushed, "Yes or no?" Chalmers squared up to Toons, and looking him directly in the eye said, "Yes, definitely it will happen, but Toons, please listen carefully. It will cost you for my full-time presence over 8 months. 6 months to soft opening plus 2 more months to hard opening, 8 months in all. It will cost you for extra work by the contractor, but not a significant add for them. Just enough to make up underspecified and improper consultant plans, and the special touches to get the wow for the opening. I'll keep the costs down by using only locally available materials, a maximum 12 to 15% cost add to the softscape, okay? And none of that team review time wasting, agreed? Do we have a deal?" Toons looked into Chalmers' eyes and then, without comment, nodded agreement. Quickly moving on, Toons recommended to all a special energy drink, available only at the library. Jean-Claude and Chalmers continued with their mint tea. Part 4. Emiratis. The unknown factor. The locals, the Emiratis, sedate, well-dressed, dedicated family people. But... Toons' energy drink was being served when his Emirati acquaintances walked in, all in white ganduras, traditional Emirati menswear, 2 in white gutras with black akals, and 1 in a brown hamdaniya. They were all introduced. From their names, it was clear that all 3 were immediate nephews and cousins of the Abu Dhabi Nakyan family. One of them, Fairuz, in the brown hamdaniya, when he saw Jean-Claude, treated him like old close friends, sharing a light nose-to-nose touch greeting. Jean-Claude introduced his old friend Chalmers to Fairuz. Fairuz was the person from Liwa, the student for whom Jean-Claude had advised and helped structure local ethnobotanical research. Jean-Claude said that no one knew the people, the plants, and the sands of Liwa like Fairuz. Coincidentally, Fairuz was also Toons' acquaintance, who had been showing a special interest in the Liwa Kasar project. Fairuz and Toons shook hands and exchanged greetings. Everybody was on the same page regarding the Liwa Kasar project, and for the time being, Toons was paying a bit more attention to Jean-Claude. But when Fairuz's friends started talking football, Toons became more interested in talking football with them. Fairuz had returned a year or so ago from the U.S., where he had completed both his master's and Ph.D. at Harvard University, focusing on overlap shared in the domains of business management and ethnobotany. He had just turned 30. At 5'10" and 165 pounds, he was trim and fit. His black beard and moustache were neatly cropped, short, in a style becoming his family and their position of power. He spoke softly, like the well-educated gentleman he was, radiating command and control, as often seen in a person groomed for leadership, and appropriately confident to accept it. Now he was finding his way forward, to a position in the Abu Dhabi Emirati hierarchy, to marriage, and to fulfill his destiny, to improve his country and its way of life. He was diligent, patient, and he was fond, youthfully fond of flash cars and driving them hard. Part 5. Sustainable Rimmel. What happens when popular jargon meets a larger-than-life, a larger-than-time landscape? What is sustainable about something that is always shifting? Or rather, is always shifting the most appropriate definition for sustainable? Is sustainable larger than time? Is it larger than eternity? The more attention one pays to popular jargon, the more folly one absorbs. Fayrouz, Jean-Claude, and Chalmers had much in common. They shared interest, yet varied perspectives on the sands and on the Bedou lifestyle. They sat down together. Fayrouz asked for dates and kahwa, Arabic coffee, which was roasted, ground, and prepared on a side table. Chalmers and Jean-Claude joined him. Traditionally taken in restrained amount, kahwa and dates, a soft, sweet, tender, buttery room-temperature date, washed down with a thimbleful of the hottest, bitterest, freshly brewed cardamom-flavored coffee. Chalmers took the opportunity to explore a topic that was on his mind since hearing Kelvin Isley the other day describe his experience of an almost unearthly, powerful rhythm of the heat emanating from the sands. He drew on Thesiger's recognition of the exceptionally strong power of the sands. Thesiger had observed in the Bedou people intensely occupied with the sands. They never commented on the beauty of the sands, the sky, the night, or the sunset. Chalmers asked, "Both before and since the coming of Islam, I have read that genii, spirits, have resided as unusual forces in the sands. Fayrouz, I am curious. Is there anything about the genii in the sands that could be a good reference for landscape architects these days, sustainability or otherwise?" Jean-Claude quickly added some facts. "If I may, on the sustainability part, for centuries it can be concluded that without oil and electricity, this Abu Dhabi Emirate region sustains at most about 25,000 humans, but with very significant, serious hardships." "Interesting, this concept of sustainability," Fayrouz started. "I agree with your numbers, Jean-Claude. But the quality of their life, the tenuous nature of the supply of food and water, made life here almost like a penal colony." Fayrouz suggested, "Current environmentalists, mostly from the temperate Western world, seem to romanticize a simpler lifestyle. Pre-oil, pre-industrial. Life here was hell, even 50 years ago, a day-in, day-out major struggle for existence." Jean-Claude added, "Fayrouz, along the same line, I recently read a novel written by an Emirati lady, born in the 1940s. Sandfish was the title, and the lady's name was Maha Gargash. She described her life as a youth, and their small herd of goats in the foothills of the Hajar Mountains, then after marriage her move to the Dubai region, with its dependence on pearling. Impossible hardships, absolutely impossible hardships." Chalmers speculated, "But people do always find some small pleasures, even with hardships all around them, right?" Fayrouz replied, "If your pleasure is finding brackish water for survival, that is the simple pleasure that keeps people, as Thesiger observed, from enjoying the sunset, from seeing beauty in the sands. The empty quarter meant death was in your face, using an American idiom, 24/7, 365. Fayrouz then rhetorically asked, "Now that we have technology to produce water for health, for cleanliness, for fresh fruits and vegetables, for healthier animals, for pleasure gardens, who in their definition of sustainability will deny us these?" Jean-Claude suggested, "Your question, Fayrouz, if I may, is it not similar to many other developing countries currently chafing at the developed world, chafing at the one-world impositions from those same textbook environmentalists, who ask sacrifices of the developing countries?" Chalmers then offered, "Could what you say not be reworded into some kind of postmodern imperialism? Or maybe it's just good old-fashioned totalitarianism. We know what is good for you, now just take it." Fairuz, speaking with a gentleman's clarity, evenness, and measured passion, looked into the eyes of both Jean-Claude and Chalmers, then offered, "I won't speak for others now, only for Emiratis, only for the Bedou. I find it offensive that engineers and planners from the temperate climate West bring their standards, their self-serving bases of calculations, their romantic fantasies to our country, and demand us, in their own polite and politically correct language, to, for example, cut our water use by 50%. Let them come and live in the sands, the old way, for 2 months, before self-righteously engaging in discussion about how much water Emiratis should or shouldn't use. Let them arrive at Liwa, overland on foot, on camel from Salalah, instead of stepping off an Emirates 767 and taking a BMW 7 Series to a 5-star hotel." Normally, the world saw the impeccable, gentlemanly public face of the Emiratis in their international attempt to be seen as part of the worldwide push for sustainability. Here, in this intimate private discussion, Fairuz had clearly just revealed an educated, though usually unspoken, local reality, contrasting it with the politically correct, popular sustainability soundbites. Fairuz then asked, "What is sustainability in a 67,000 square kilometer emirate that is 100% desert, and never sustained more than 25,000 people? There is no such thing as desertification when we start with 100% desert." He continued, "Is it not a symptom of strength and significant affluence if one can detach from the realities of the sands, and abstractly view them as beauty, as an object of enjoyment? In this respect, Sheikh Mohammed of Dubai uses beauties and strengths of nature often in his Nabati poems." Fairuz said, You guys must understand there is a special tapestry of the sands that can never be known by consultants, amateurs, tourists, to and in the UAE." He concluded, "That tapestry is woven into our souls by our ancestry. Its weave is not easily revealed except among brothers, and most outsiders cannot see it, even if it is laid before them."